Okay, now with closing in on 39 million downloads on the podcast, remember that's the fifth way you can get it. And we'd love everybody out there in this audience, if you could please sign up for the podcast and give us a review. What we'd love is to sign up for the podcast. Even if you listen to all the other methodologies, just go. It's all free. Everything here is free. Just go there and sign up for the podcast. It's now the today's the 9th anniversary of the passing away of really a giant in this movement, irreplaceable. And that was Andrew Breitbart. Now I want to bring in one of his closest friends. You know him as the filmmaker, the great conservative, traditionalist, Catholic filmmaker, Jason Jones. Jason, you join us from Texas today or from Hawaii? Where are we getting you from?
I'm in the beautiful hill country of Texas today, Steve.
It doesn't get any better than that. Andrew Breitbart, a giant among men, not just physically, but what he meant for this movement and who he was and how much he gave of everything, right? His whole person as being everything to throw into this fight. And it's ironic. He finished CPAC, and I mean, Andrew was known as just being a dominant personality in those years at CPAC. Jason, what are your memories?
Yeah, well, it was almost 9 years ago to this hour. It was 5:30 a.m. where a young man who worked for me called me and shared with the news. And I have so many beautiful memories with Andrew. CPAC, he'd walk through CPAC, and everyone would light up around him. You would know where Andrew was by the smiles on everyone's face. People would glow in the presence of Andrew. But I think my best memory was just a few months before he passed away. Andrew and I were featured extras in the movie Atlas Shrugged. And when you're an extra, you just have a lot of time to talk. And so Andrew, myself, and my daughter, we sat around talking about Ayn Rand and objectivism, but more importantly, with Andrew, we talked about God and how Ayn Rand couldn't recognize the source of the beauty of the human person, which she was a great advocate for the human person, but she could never recognize the source. So being able to spend that day so close to his returning to the Lord, talking about God, is a beautiful memory I have.
Raheem, you met Andrew. It was also at CPAC, right?
Yeah, look, I mean, I met him in passing at an event once, but my memory of him was when he physically passed by me. We were standing at the Marriott Wardman Hotel. It was during CPAC, and
the old days.
Occupy people were outside. And we were asked, I don't know if it was hotel security or event, whatever, we were asked as young activists to kind of form a line at the door to stop them charging the back doors of the Marriott. Well, remember they had that old ramp up to the hotel. Yep. You could just walk straight in. And we formed a line. It was actually some of my buddies from England and me. We formed the line, and we were just kind of standing there waiting to kind of try and stop anybody coming in. The line was breached from behind. Somebody barged through us and ran out and started screaming at the Occupy people. And I learned later that person was Andrew Breitbart.
Well, we were making Occupy Unmasked. If you want to see much about Antifa and really Andrew's deep knowledge of this movement, we made the film. And in fact, Andrew passed away in the middle of filming. You wouldn't know that from the finished product because we have filmed so much of Andrew. But he understood the Antifa radical nature, the anarchy, the nature of the anarchists on the other side at a very deep level. I mean, Andrew was it was not just the physical presence and the humor and the humanity. He was literally a genius when it came to, because he'd been an editor at Drudge for many years and also Huffington Post. He understood how people came to the news, right? His thing was he understood how people came to news, right. and with social media, he was so far ahead of the mainstream media in this regard. It was quite extraordinary. So we're going to do something also at 5 o'clock to commemorate this day. 9 years ago today, a giant, and will never be replaced, can't be replaced. There's certain people that come along that you just can't. It's like Rush Limbaugh, Andrew Breitbart. These are giants upon whom shoulders we stand, right? I want to go now. You've got a breaking story on I think, the stream. Talk to us about the slave labor camps in China, and is product inadvertently getting into what's this about Christian bookstores, Christian product, and the slave labor camps of China, Jason?
Well, I thank you, gentlemen, for covering this topic. I've already received, the article just dropped a few hours ago, and I've received dozens of emails from Christian bookstore owners saying they've looked into their stores and they're appalled to see how many products are from China. Many other bookstore owners said they've made a concerted effort not to buy products that are made in China, but it's almost impossible. The sad truth is, thanks to some great investigative reporting, that now we've discovered that so many of these products that we have in our Christian bookstores are made by Christian slaves. And Ambassador Brownback has talked about this for years. And now we're finding more and more products are made in the camps where Turkic Muslims, the Uyghur people, are in these camps making products like plaques that say, the Lord will set you free. And that plaque that you have hanging in your Christian bookstore was made by slave labor. And Steve, you always talk about this as an activist audience. You've talked a lot about the importance of precincts. When I would run political campaigns in the days before social media, my first stop was the local Christian bookstore. I'd go to whatever district it was in the country. I'd go to the local Christian bookstore and say, do you have a list of your best customers? I know those are going to be my organizers and activists. You have to go to your local Christian bookstore. It's the beating heart of our community. It's where the people of all the different denominations come together. And the most faithful and active people in their communities. If we cannot have Christian bookstores free of products made in China by slaves, there's no hope for Apple. There's no hope for Coca-Cola and Costco and Nike. So let's start. This is an activist audience. I think this is something that we can really do to send a strong message that we are not going to have any products in any Christian bookstore in this country made in China, because there is no way to certify whether or not these products were in fact made by slaves.
So how do people get to this? How do people get engaged? How do they get involved? And just one thing, how are you certain that it's made by the Uyghurs? Because a lot of product, look, I don't like the fact of how they oppress Lao Beijing in their factories and pay them virtually slave wages, right? But then you've got the camps of the Uyghurs. When you say the slave labor of Christians, are you saying that there are camps like that Christians are in with the Uyghurs, or that some are there, or just define that so we make sure that this is fact-based?
Well, no, what's something is mostly with the Uyghur community, and they're always appreciative of my work. And I get all of these emails from Uyghur expatriates who thank me and say, Jason, you're Catholic. How come you don't speak enough about the Catholics that are in these camps with us, these other Christians that have been in the camps with us? So this is something I've had personally from eyewitness testimony. Because there are 3 million ethnic and religious minorities in the Uyghur in these camps, it really captivates us. It captures our attention. But the reality is there are lots of Christians and others, I'm sure there are a lot of atheists in these forced labor camps having their organs harvested.
Falun Gong.
But because this mass Falun Gong, and so there are all these different ethnic and religious minorities and people in these camps for all sorts of reasons. Because the Uyghur genocide is really the greatest genocide since the Shoah, it captures our attention. But we have to know, and this is something we've known for a long time.
Are they going to talk, by the way, are they going to talk when the Pope, you're going to be back on the show later in the week, when the Pope, my favorite Pope, Pope Francis, when he goes, I think he's going to Iraq this week. Are they going to talk about the slave labor camps in China of the Muslims that are being oppressed? Are they going in Iraq? Are they going to join? Are the Pope and the leaders of the Islam faith, the Muslim faith, they're going to meet in Iraq? Are they going to talk about the Chinese Communist Party and the slave labor camps of Muslims in Western China? Is that going to be a topic for conversation, do you think, Jason Jones?
Maybe in 5 or 6 years after we have the camps closed, they'll be very confident that they'll talk about it. I have an article coming out later in the week addressing the Pope's silence during the genocide of Christians and Yazidis and others in Iraq at the hands of ISIS, when you and President Trump, supposedly the bad guys, were the only people in the world fighting for these ethnic and religious minorities. Our Pope was silent. I was in Iraq, miles from ISIS, in an IDP camp, and an Orthodox priest crying was asking me, where are the Western Christians? Why is the Pope beaming? This is what he said to me. Why is the Pope, your Pope, he was Orthodox, beaming images of wild animals from Africa on the walls of St. Peter with Al Gore, and not beaming images of these children that surround you? And I said, I have no answer for that. So now the Pope is there. Thanks to President Trump and his administration, the caliphate was near obliterated. Now it's making a comeback. But look, I'm challenging the Pope there to apologize for his silence in the midst of the genocide, to say never again and mean it. He's meeting with some very beautiful people that have been very courageous. And I hope that he has courage to apologize. We have a lot of people apologizing for things they had nothing to do with. Nike's making slaves with using slaves to make shoes. Well, they're virtue signaling for slavery in the 19th century in the United States. I would like to see the Pope go there, apologize for his confusion and silence, and then speak up for the Uyghur, speak up for the Catholics. But there's the secret deal with China.
Yep.
That as a Catholic, as a lay Catholic man, I don't know the terms of this deal. And so I'm not hopeful. But you know what, Steve? We have you. We have the War Room. We have I think the most powerful force in the world today can be the lay Catholic, because lay Catholics in America, we should force our church to speak up on these issues. And if we stand up and demand,
we had Pam Pryor here from the State Department.
We demand.
Pam Pryor was under Pompeo. She was here in studio with us on Saturday with Frank Gaffney. We had a faith base, but we try to also focus on the persecution of Christians, which is the greatest persecution of Christians in the history of the faith going on right now globally throughout the world, from Africa to Asia, to certain areas of Latin America, but potentially Asia, China, and in sub-Saharan Africa. Tomorrow, and Raheem, I think we're going to do it at 5 o'clock in the afternoon now. Yeah. At 5 o'clock tomorrow, we're going to do another 1 hour special. This is the persecution of the Jews of Europe and the rise of anti-Semitism globally. And we're going to have Rabbi Sparrow. I think we're going to have God Sad on. We're going to have a group. Raheem, this is a topic Raheem actually led the charge on at Breitbart London for years and years and years, talking about what was going on in Europe. And so we're going to get the persecution of the Jews of Europe and the rise of anti-Semitism as a global phenomenon are going to be tomorrow. It's going to be 5 o'clock or entire hour. We'll be getting you up to date on the news as we always do, but we're turning that over to a 1 hour special. All week, in fact, we're talking about the persecution of faith-based communities throughout the world. This is one thing the mainstream media does not want to cover in the detail it needs to be covered on, and we got to start calling people out. The first people got to be called out, I think, are the Gulf Emirates and countries like Persia and these others about what's going on with the Uyghur, the Chinese Communist Party, who's in business with the mullahs would not exist if the Chinese Communist Party was not financing them. They're financing them. They're buying the oil, right? Long-term contracts. They're supplying their military with military equipment. They are trying to consolidate their hold on the Eurasian landmass. And Pakistan's a partner. The mullahs in Iran are partners. Turkey, Russia now today. Obviously got the vassal state of North Korea, but in this process, there is a massive persecution of faith-based people. And what's outrageous to me is that the Pope is going to Iraq this week. You haven't heard any word, Jason, at all about concentration camps of the Uyghurs, of millions of Muslims that are being persecuted by the atheistic, materialistic dictatorship in Beijing. That would be the Chinese Communist Party. Jason, we got about a minute. How do people get access to you? Because I know the live chat's blowing up right now. They want to know how people can follow you during the day and know more about you.
Thank you, Steve. My website is movietomovement.com, or if you want to stand with us and stand with the vulnerable, go to thegreatcampaign.org, and my podcast is The Jason Jones Show. I want to bring this back to Andrew Breitbart. Andrew was birthed by cancel culture when they tried to cancel Clarence Thomas. I think the organizing principle for me, in my activism, is standing with those who you try to other. Cancel culture at home, this is the cultural revolution. Doxing children, doxing young women for a dance they went to 3 or 4 years ago. I mean, this is unbelievable. We need to stand with those who are being othered. You talk about the rise of anti-Semitism. Whenever scapegoating and othering happens, you know anti-Semitism is right around the corner. If we don't, we need to stand with whoever they're othering, from cancel culture to the Uyghurs in China. And this is something Andrew Breitbart, this is how he lived his life.
Defense of the Judeo-Christian West for the good of all mankind. Okay, short commercial break. Darren Beattie, Revolver, on it. What's happening on Capitol Hill? Why do we still have troops? And why don't we have the truth about what went on the 6th? In a minute.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, it's obvious we have a long, tough fight ahead of us. You saw yesterday President Trump laying out these policies. This is, victory begets victory, and we're going to have to grind this through. If you're a patriot warrior, we need you as a health warrior. So we set up a new site. We've procured now 1 million bottles of D3, this vitamin D3, and also 1 million bottles of zinc. This is the start of our War Room Defense Pack. If you're out there in this audience, you need this. You need to go look at it, check out the site, and sign up. Go to warroomdefense.com. That's one word, warroomdefense.com. Need everybody in the live chat, everybody listening to this podcast later, go to warroomdefense.com. We need you healthy. We need you on point. We need you with the energy that you hear every day coming out of the war room. The way to do this is to become part of this program. Like I said, we got 1 million bottles of vitamin D3, 1 million bottles of zinc. It's all yours for free. Go today, check it out, make an informed decision if you want to sign up, but we need everybody to go check it out right now, warroomdefense.com. I do it every day and get all jacked up. I love the packaging, too.
We have somebody in the live chat whose 50th birthday is as well. Ask for a shout out. So
okay,
I'm saying
fine.
Happy 50th birthday.
Okay, do we have a name?
I don't know. It's a weird username. I didn't
okay,
quite
fine.
see it and scroll
Happy
away.
50th.
Happy 50th.
Happy 50th. I want to bring in now, by the way, we're a platform for action. We're here about that, and quite frankly, that's what the becoming a health warrior is about, your agency, and about the agency over a long period of time. Because it's going to be a long, tough fight. You're not going to snap your fingers or wave a magic wand. It's not going to change tomorrow. It is changing because we're getting victories, right? And we can talk about that. The key is to become active. We're not a passive show. We're not here to entertain you. We're not here. We provide information, nomenclature, statics and dynamics of process, critical path, so that you can get your own mental map. When people have mental maps, then they can start to, all information flows into that. They can start to make their own judgments, become clear. And then you're a force multiplier as you push forward. What did Herschel Walker say? The number one thing you do is educate yourself and push out the content, but get engaged. And every, whether it's Scott Pressler, whether it's Tom Del Beccaro, the leader of one of the leaders of the grassroots movement out in California to open the second front and recall Gavin Newsom. It's all about engagement. We want you to go to these new emerging sites like revolver.news, but we also want you to go to precinctstrategies.com right now. In this audience, you have to make a conscious decision. If you're not going to be a precinct committeeman, that's fine. But make a conscious decision. At least go to Dan Schultz's site, get the information, find out what's in your community, and make a conscious decision. Remember, this show is about the work on oneself and making conscious choices with your intention, boom, to drive the narrative. Now I want to bring in a young man who is, I think, one of the most brilliant guys in our movement. And we like to put thought leaders up there. Normally, he and I are arguing about Heidegger and some of his philosophical work he did as a professor. But he's also the driving force, one of the driving forces about a site that I love so much because it's high and low. It's like reading the best broadsheet in the world, the Financial Times of London or the Times of London or the Telegraph or the New York Times. And I know people are blowing up, but these are the major papers in the world. And also you get the tabloid. You get high and low, right? And that's if you go to Revolver, you get high and low.
I am actually kind of envious of it. It's very good.
It's fabulous.
I look at it every day and I just think, wow, that's the way to lay it out.
Here's the way. If you go to Citizens Free Press, you go to Populist Press, you go to Michael Patrick Leahy's sites, you go all these different sites. We want Dan Bongino, you go to Gateway Pundit. What you're seeing is the team there. That's their idea of curation. They're putting up in front of you, looking at all this news throughout the day of what they think is most important. And that's why you got to go to these different sites. You get a different personality in each one of what they think is important. The Revolver is, but like I said, it's a broadsheet and a tabloid all in one place. You get the high and you get the low. And I want to bring in now Darren Beattie. Darren, you've been doing major investigative reporting also, which I'm glad to see. Gateway Pundit, National Pulse. I mean, you've got these new emerging sites that are, to me, at the cutting edge of investigative reporting. What you guys are doing on, and here's what's so amazing. 5 or 6 weeks into this, it's still kind of confusing about how many, is there, I think we read on your site the other day, there are like 4 or 5 white nationalists. You thought this was a white nationalist takeover. In fact, Time Magazine's got a new article right now. We're going to try to get it up later, talking about the evangelical movement has to be taken back by the white supremacists from the white nationalists, and it's got to become much more liberal, and people got to have awakening to take it back because it's all white nationalists, white supremacists. Darren, what is your reporting and the reporting of the Revolver.news? Tell us about the 6th.
Yes, thank you. So everyone's wanting to know, when does the next major installment come out with respect to Revolver News' investigative series on January 6th? And I can promise the next major installment with big breaking stuff is going to come out at the latest Wednesday, and I'm going to work very hard to make it happen tomorrow. But in the meantime, there are very important pieces. If you go to revolver.news, the top 2 pieces are sort of updates on the investigation, especially reacting to some updates that we've seen in the media. And I encourage all of your viewers, go read those two, and in particular the one called Capital Mystery, New Evidence Likely Clears MAGA of Murder Charge. Remember, this all goes back to the original charge that Officer Sicknick, who tragically perished, was actually murdered by rioters by being bludgeoned with a fire extinguisher. That has been shown to be false. Everyone admits it. And this piece goes in quite granular detail into all the little peculiarities and how the narrative developed from the mainstream media side, and really bizarre open questions. Because as you've been saying, and as this piece points out, there's been a recent report saying from unidentified sources, unidentified law enforcement sources. This is, by the way, this is the new senior administration official, unidentified law enforcement source. Keep in mind that it was the unidentified law enforcement sources that gave us the fire extinguisher hoax in the first place. In fact, a really interesting parallelism that's highly suspicious.
Okay, but hang on a second. I can't understand, though. Yep. Over the weekend, I was bombarding you with NBC News. Why is it that nobody actually can lay out just a critical path and the facts of the officer's death? You know, some people, I still don't know. Did he go home? Did he go to the police? Where did he collapse? Now they're pushing out the bear spray thing. When can we just get the facts and the timelines, Darren Beattie? And why is no one in the Republican Party forcing this to happen up on Capitol Hill?
Well, on that note, we are going to pressure the hell out of them. You guys at War Room and us at Revolver, we're going to pressure the hell out of them, especially after the next bombshell comes out at Revolver. We're going to give them all the questions they need to ask. But on your point, you're absolutely right. What is so hard about this? It's such a bizarre and conflicting timeline. First, they said, oh, he died of a fire extinguisher. Now they're saying bear spray. First, they said he collapsed in the Capitol. Now they're saying he collapsed in the police station. I think that's the newest official version. If so, why isn't there any video? And in fact, this latest development that I was mentioning, they said, oh, the FBI has finally gotten a hold of video that indicates what may have happened to him. So they're crowdsourcing investigations into literal teenage girls who may have been within, 1,000 feet of the Capitol. Why aren't they crowdsourcing this alleged video that they have now in order to help the public identify this suspect?
Look, it's great that it's great that Revolver's doing this, but I also want to know why the officials in the Republican Party, why Kevin McCarthy is allowing people to be smeared, this movement to be smeared every day. How many people have actually been arrested of the almost million people that were here that day? President Trump said yesterday, quote, "It's the biggest crowd I've ever addressed, and I've addressed some big crowds." This crowd was massive, and it was 99.99% peaceful. How many people actually under investigation? How many arrested? And how many white supremacists, white nationalists, and how many violent people? We still don't have all the facts on that, and the mainstream media is not pushing it that hard because the facts go against their narrative.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. And if I could just sneak in two technical or detailed points from this piece that I think will give everyone pause when they hear it. One was the idea that originally the hoax of the fire extinguisher came from two unidentified law enforcement sources. The bear spray issue is actually really interesting. There's no definite report saying it was bear spray. There were reports saying, it might have been some kind of spray. The coalescence around bear spray is interesting in and of itself because actually there are all kinds of law enforcement reports listed in this Revolver piece saying that bear spray is actually relatively harmless version of spray as compared to some other sprays that exist. And in fact, according to at least one a law enforcement veteran whose post we included, there hasn't been a single verified instance of a law enforcement officer dying of bear spray on duty ever. So that would be, if that's true, that would be a very bizarre official story for them to move to. And as I said, it's also weird. If they have the video, why aren't they releasing it? Why aren't they crowdsourcing it? What's going on? Why is it taking them so long to release the toxicology report, which, by the way, was right before a expedited cremation, mysteriously, inexplicably. Even the Washington Post characterizes this fact as highly unusual. The expedited cremation and the fact that after all of this time, we still don't have any toxicology reports. Why is it so complicated? Why is it so convoluted? Why aren't we getting answers? This is what I'd like to know.
By the way,
and we need to press them until they give us those answers.
I want to hold you over if I could, because I got a couple more questions to ask. I know Raheem, I want to talk also about CPAC and the speech, since you used to be one of the president's speechwriters. But just quickly, in 15 seconds, are Republicans on Capitol Hill helping Revolver at least get these out there, or are you getting crickets from the Republicans on Capitol Hill?
Well, we are coordinating behind the scenes with a number of congressmen, and I hope that develops into something very public and very forceful. But of course, I can't guarantee that yet. That's up to the lawmakers to do their part.
We got to bounce. We got to bounce. We'll be right back. We're going to hold you over. We'll be right back.
Great.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
I was so excited about getting Darren Beattie off the golf course and into the show that I forgot one of the most important parts of our vitamin program and our health program. And that is, this is all sourced, as we follow Rosemary Gibson, it's all sourced and manufactured here in the good old United States of America. And it's free except for its shipping and handling. Remember, if you're a patriot warrior, you need to be a health warrior. We need you here for the long term. We need you here for the grind. So go to warroomdefense.com. You get the War Room Defense Pack. I think you'll love the packaging of it. So warroomdefense.com. Need everybody on the show right now to pound into that. And tell us what you think. Need feedback from you guys, but we got 1 million bottles of the vitamin D3 in the zinc to start off with. So make sure you go there. Manufactured here in the United States of America. We're a big believer in Rosemary Gibson and bringing the supply chains back to the United States. Raheem's going to talk to us about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine here in a few minutes, but I got to get back. Darren Beattie and Raheem. So Darren, you were one of the speechwriters. You're one of the you and Buskirk and Brian Kennedy, you got, 6, 7, 8 of these major intellectual powerhouses like yourself. In fact, you were the only Ivy or Ivy equivalent professor, I think, that came out and supported President Trump before the 2016 victory. You were a speechwriter in the White House and one of the great thinkers in this movement. What did you think yesterday of the speech, and what did you think of CPAC overall?
I thought the speech was good. It was strong, and how could it not be? This was his first major public event since the inauguration, and I think he delivered. He hit some good points. I liked what he said about tech censorship. I like what he said about Liz Cheney. If I could get into something slight friendly criticism, though.
Sure.
He said correctly. He noted correctly that the most powerful political force in existence right now is an endorsement from Donald Trump. And what I would really love to see is for him to wield that power more wisely. And he's identified overt enemies. He's identified the problem of Liz Cheney and Mitt Romney and all those. Frankly, those are pretty easy. I'm really glad he did it, especially Liz Cheney, but those are pretty easy. You can't just go after the people who overtly attack you. The more dangerous ones are the ones who don't overtly attack you and work behind the scenes to undermine you. That's been the story since the very beginning. And so I hope he develops a more keen sensitivity to the threat posed to him by Kevin McCarthy, by Mitch McConnell, by these others who aren't necessarily overt enemies, although in the case of Mitch McConnell, it's questionable. I hope he goes fully onto the warpath and doesn't just save his criticism for the easy and overt cases that are much deserved, like Liz Cheney and Mitt Romney.
I think this is
he needs to be more responsible about his endorsements.
This is a brilliant thing. I want everybody in the live chat and all the different venues. I want you to give us the names of guys you think out there that are part of this thing that to actually not defend the MAGA policies, right? And to do it kind of behind the scenes. If you have names, if you have ideas, concepts, because you guys follow these people very closely. I want to go, and Raheem, I need you to jump in here. Would you give Kevin McCarthy, given that she's blatant about this and brazen, and the president called her a warmonger yesterday, right? Right? He's drafting off a little bit here, the war room. He called her a warmonger, and she's clearly not just not supportive. She's in his grill, not supportive. How much time would you give Kevin McCarthy to make a move here and call for another vote of leadership? How would you put him on the clock, Mr. Darren Beattie?
Well, I would hope so, but that remains to be seen because, unfortunately, the president, as great as he is, and he is the leader of this movement, he hasn't really exhibited a keen sensitivity to who his actual enemies are until it's so late in the game that they're overtly attacking him. So I hope he catches on at this point and goes after Kevin McCarthy, goes after Mitch McConnell. There are a lot of people that are undermining him who aren't spelling it out in public in the way that Liz Cheney is.
Okay, Darren, real quickly, what are you following on? What are the things our audience is looking for? Signal, not noise, and over the other side of the hill this week. What should they be focused on when they go to Revolver?
Well, as always, following lockdowns and the consequences thereof, the mental illness, everything. We constantly follow that issue. Geopolitically, we're following the strategic autonomy of Europe. We're following China and India. And of course, here domestically, we're following the fact that the national security apparatus has been repurposed and deployed against the American people, principally Trump supporters. And the key event in this is, of course, the 1/6, what happened in 1/6. And we're following that very closely. And as I mentioned, your viewers can expect explosive new revelations coming out either tomorrow or Wednesday. We have to be very careful because when the stakes are this high, you need to make sure you have all your ducks in a row. So we appreciate everyone's patience on that.
What's your social media? What's your social media handles? How do people follow you? Your coordinates.
Yep. Social media is at Darren J. Beattie, DarrenJBeattie. And it's always revolver.news. Go there now and read these pieces on the Capitol and prepare yourself for what's coming.
Thank you, brother. Raheem, you're still in the penalty box on social media, correct?
Yes,
so how do people get to you?
Still another 2 days until I'm allowed back onto Twitter. If they allow me back on. Remember last time they did a 7-day ban. And then they added another 48 hours afterwards, just for fun, the cherry on the cake. So 2 days is when they say. In the meantime, Gab, Parler, Telegram, all of these are very big for us.
And they're on fire.
They're very big for us over at the National Pulse. We've actually gone to the point now where we have Gab and Parler share icons on the site, on the articles, like you used to have Facebook and Twitter ones. And I've noticed that those ones are now overtaking, in terms of this audience's use, mainstream usage on the site.
You went back and double-checked. Why did actual Twitter take you down? What were the stories?
Well, their claim was that, and this is what's really interesting when you consider the transhumanism stuff as well, their claim was it was this tweet that I had sent, was 9 days prior to the ban that said, the election was stolen, and it was a great tweet. It was the best tweet. And they said 9 days later, this tweet can cause violence. Okay. So firstly, if they're claiming that, I want to hear them answer in a court of law, hey, you left this up for 9 days. Is Twitter responsible for that, for the potential violence that might be caused for that over the course of those?
That didn't happen.
That didn't happen over the course of those 9 days. But the other thing is, I actually happen to believe that it was triggered via an algorithm, which is to say that enough people on the left reported that tweet because it had something like 12,000 retweets, that tweet. And I think the left mass reported it. The algorithm kicks in, suspends my account, and now you have human beings defending the actions of the algorithm.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
The analog defends the algorithm, the digital, the data. So Tom Del Beccaro from Rescue California. Tom, is this the biggest grassroots movement ever just in California or the nation to recall Gavin Newsom, who used to be the wunderkind of the Democratic Party? You got Cuomo, who looks like he's going to be under a very tough investigation up there for many things. For it looks like sexual harassment plus the nursing home scandal. You've got this major process in motion to recall Gavin Newsom. Talk to us about that, what happened at CPAC, and your thoughts also about the president's speech.
Well, let's start with the president's speech. I think we're in a moment in time, just like, if you will, 18, 1824 to 1828 when Jacksonian democracy was born. Remember, Jackson loses in the Electoral College with the corrupt bargain. And he goes basically, he was nominated, this is the subject of my next Epic Times piece, he was nominated a year later, 3 years in advance, to go again. And he builds up this nationwide fervor about the elites in Washington and says, essentially, it's up to the people to take Washington back. And he was the champion of the common man. That's where that came into the American lexicon. So the Trump speech happened in a moment in time, in context. He remains the person who speaks to that. Every reason he was elected in 2016, Steve and Raheem, exists today. It's not disappearing. You can make the argument it'll be even worse after a year of the Biden presidency because of government overreach and attacks on the common man. So what was most amazing to me as a historian about that speech is how much larger than the existing White House occupant the former president is. He looms over it. He is Grover Cleveland over Benjamin Harrison. He is Andrew Jackson over John Quincy Adams. Both of them were larger figures and wound up winning 4 years later. And so I think this speech continues to recognize the most important dynamic happening in America today, which is Washington elitism and the desire to control people. And that's why that speech was so important.
The managed decline by our elites. It's still here. President Trump fought a heroic fight against it for 4 years, backed it off, started particularly with Chinese Communist Party, with our sovereignty, with our borders. You can see it was laid out in the speech. That's why I thought the speech did its job. One thing I noticed was missing from CPAC, maybe I missed it, was there any mention of this California recall?
There was a mention, and it was by Rick Grinnell, who some people say is going to run for the office. It was an enormously unfortunate and a missed opportunity because your earlier question is spot on. We have over 1.8 million people who have signed a petition. We have Facebook groups in the hundreds of thousands of people have joined these various groups, and they are striking back, demanding government accountability. It's not necessarily a conservative movement per se, but it is an accountability movement. And that needs to be tapped because it's not very much different from the reason Trump got elected, right? People are tired of unaccountable elected officials who dictate to them instead of foster their prosperity. And so it's a huge missed opportunity at CPAC. What other state has such an underground and now above ground movement? The answer is none. It's needed. This is why RescueCalifornia.org gets inquiries from Georgia and Michigan and Wisconsin and Washington State. Other people want this accountability, and we at RescueCalifornia.org are delivering it for California in some regards, along with the original petitioner, Orrin Heatley.
So what do you guys need right now? We got about a minute left. What do you need our audience to do? Because they'll do it. Tell them what they want to be part of this. What do they need to do today?
We need some. Go to RescueCalifornia.org and give us some amount, whether it's $10 or 50 or 100,000. Whatever it is, because we are spending this money to ensure to get more signatures. And on a serious note, a $10 or $15, $20 donation can help us at Rescue California. We got to get this across the finish line and send the biggest message of accountability that will be heard this year and maybe even next.
Okay, just real quickly, this is MAGA, but it's also, here's the power of it. It's also independents, and you have Democrats here that are finally going to think through really what they want out of government. One more time, Tom, because this is a movement that really takes in everybody. It is a unity movement. How do people get to the site? What do you need them to do?
RescueCalifornia.org. Download the petition if you haven't signed it and you live in California, and please help us out with the donation. Thanks so much.
Tom Del Beccaro, a real a leader here. And Rick Grinnell gave a great speech and actually talked about this. That was my trick question. Rick Grinnell actually, I think, spent a couple of minutes on how important this was. And Rick Grinnell is looked at as the guy that could be the guy that runs against Newsom in the recall. So we'll get to more of that in the days and weeks ahead. Short commercial break. Raheem and I will be back in the War Room in just a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon. Not let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
You know, I want to thank the team. We had a ton of great cold opens and clips to play. We had so many guests we had to get through and information we want to get out there. Maybe over the next couple of days we'll play this. No, Raheem and the team in Denver really want to thank. Once again, Real America's Voice. Our Saturday show was epic. I mean, I think we had 20 guests, had people from both CPAC and in studio. We're going to have a lot of those personalities you met. Anna Polina. We're going to have Kim Kralik. We're going to have Klasik. We're going to have her. Kim is actually going to be a co-host here, we think, this week here. Amanda Milius also is going to be a co-host, we hope, this week. So as people come back to D.C., we want to get them in studio here. Also, just remember, I want to go back to, before we turn this to your assessment of Johnson & Johnson. You know, we're a huge believer in therapies here, you know, hydroxy and all the therapy. We're very much a thing of therapeutics. You got to get ahead of these. And remember, we're the first guys to identify this pandemic coming out of China. Whether you think, on one end, whether people think it's a hoax or whether you think it's a bioweapon out to destroy the world, we try to cover this in a straightforward manner all the way through, although we're very focused on what happened in the Wuhan lab. But just remember, today, we need you to go to War Room Defense. That's all one word, warroomdefense.com. This is all made in the United States. Everything's sourced here. Go there, check out all the information. If you want to sign up for our War Room Defense Pack, and that Defense Pack is to make you a health warrior. This is critical. We're in this for the long haul. You need to be healthy. You got to go and check out what we've got. We've got the vitamin D3 and we've got the zinc. So that's a starter, just a starter. So make sure you get in there, check it out today. Appreciate it. Now, so there's a big question about this experimental gene therapy, which is really what I think the Moderna, they're pushing it as a vaccine. Technically, my guys in the biotech world say it's not technically a vaccine. It's a experimental gene therapy. Now, you've got the Johnson, and that's the Moderna one, correct? Then you've got the Johnson & Johnson. Tell us about what's happening today, because a big announcement coming out.
So just before I do, I just wanted to mention my therapy. We were big on therapeutic here. My therapy, actually, it was covered in the New York Times 4 days ago. And the headline of the story was, "This 105-year-old beat COVID. She credits gin-soaked raisins." I'm not even kidding. They do this whole story on this 105-year-old lady, Lucia DeClercq, out in New Jersey, the oldest, I think, resident in New Jersey, who credits soaking raisins in gin and taking them to beat I think, Spanish flu and COVID.
Hey, that's how you get to be 105.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Plus, put a little kick in your step.
Yeah, by the way, not medical advice. Right, the Johnson & Johnson. So the way this thing differs is, firstly, it's a one-shot, not a two-shot. This creates a whole lot easier in terms of logistics. It uses a viral vector called AD26. Viral vectors, common viruses that have been genetically altered, so they don't cause illness. And I'm quoting from the New York Times here, but can still cause the immune system to build up its defensive. Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna use mRNA, that's the messenger RNA, to do kind of the same thing, but as you say, very experimental in doing so. What else is different about this thing as far as logistics and getting it to people is concerned is the storage and handling of this thing. So the Johnson & Johnson actually can be kept in an ordinary refrigerator for 3 months, and the Moderna vaccine, for example, spoils after 1 month, if not frozen. So that adds a layer of the ability to get this to people much easier. The final part of this that I think is really interesting is the side effects. So again, they're saying that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine appears to be less prone than the Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna vaccines to trigger the kinds of side effects that require monitoring after the injection, which makes it more suitable for things like drive-through vaccination sites. In terms of efficacy, they're saying it's broadly the same, and actually the Johnson & Johnson one is showing efficacy against the variants as well. So So by and large, I think if you are a vaccine person and if you are interested in doing this kind of thing, the Johnson & Johnson news is a good thing for you.
What about the audience members that still, we got obviously anti-vaxxers that are on the show, but even those people that say, hey, look, it just hasn't been explained to me. And this is one of the things with Biden on the school openings, supposedly he's staking his presidency on how he handles the CCP virus. Been no confrontation with China. You've got Jake Sullivan and other guys coming out all the time saying, we know we need raw data. The WHO didn't get it. There's been no real pressuring on China. Then you look at the situation. You've got the open borders. You've got a crisis at the open borders, but the schools are still closed. You don't have any kind of, I don't think, somebody that stepped into the decisions have grabbed them and pushed them forward. But you do have the vaccines. For our audience members that are still questioning, what is the national pulse doing, or where can you tell people to go to get additional information?
Gin-soakedraisins.com. Look, I'm not.
By the way, that's the third element of our defense pack.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got the War Room Defense Pack and you have the National Pulse Defense Pack, and there's one of them is gin-soaked raisins. Look,
what's the gin you picked?
I'm not the guy who likes to do this sort of thing either. I don't like the vaccinations. I never have, even as a kid. I'm not saying they don't work. I'm not saying they don't work for people.
You've never got the flu vaccine.
I haven't got anything, by the way, and I've always been fit as a fiddle. I never had the TB or any of those things. Just totally fit as a fiddle, and it's not for me. I understand, especially with immune deficiencies and things like this, that they need certain boosters and things like that. Yeah, look, it might work for you, but I come back to the very basics of all of this for living a healthy lifestyle, which is live a healthy lifestyle.
Well, let's talk about
drink a ton of water, take a ton of vitamin C. I take a ton of probiotics.
The therapies and immune system is still the key here, correct?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the immune system is everything. And the immune system doesn't just come from taking things, by the way. The immune system also comes from interacting with the environment. The old things that our parents and our grandparents used to tell us, hey, it's okay for the kids to play in the mud sometimes,
You had Natalie Winters.
Not medical advice.
You had Natalie Winters down at CPAC. Tell us what's going to be in the National Pulse at the podcast later today, and then what's up on the National Pulse.
So we've got a packed out week here. We have this really amazing long read. We don't do a lot of long reads, but we have this amazing long read piece on the site by Thomas Farnan, one of our regular contributors, brilliant. All about the how boomerism ends. With a senile who actually isn't a boomer himself, Joe Biden, too old to be a boomer even.
Ends with transhumanism.
But how it ends and how we got to this position in the first place, how all the different things worked throughout the years, throughout the decades in terms of the racism charges, etc. Of course, we'll have Natalie Winters on. She's got a load of reporting on China bringing up as well. And I'll be going through the speech and explaining a little bit more of my thought process behind the Trump speech at CPAC too.
Navarre today at 5 o'clock is going to talk about this bond market revolt, what it means for you personally on your personal finances, because I think there's a tectonic plate shift coming in the economy. We're going to talk about that with Harvard-trained populist economist Peter Navarre, also the president's speech. Boris is going to give us the politics of it. We're also going to have more about transhumanism, the underlying issue that will overwhelm all others tonight at 5 o'clock as we come back in War Room Pandemic. See you then.